Celeste dedicated her life to the man she loved, but when she needed him the most, he cruelly discarded her. Diagnosed with late-stage cancer, she had hoped for support, but Alaric, her husband, chose the easy way out, abandoning her for a young, wealthy and healthy woman. He thought he had made a smart deal, but fate does not forgive betrayal. Years later, Celeste returns, not only healed, but richer and more powerful than he ever imagined. And now it was Alaric's turn to feel the weight of his choices. The searing Kansas City sun beat down on the cracked pavement of Troost Avenue as Celeste Matthews hurried home from her second job. Her weathered sneakers slapped against the concrete, each step a reminder of the miles she'd walked in pursuit of a better life. At 35, Celeste's face bore the gentle lines of laughter and worry in equal measure, her warm brown eyes carrying a mix of hope and weariness that spoke volumes about her journey. As she approached the modest apartment complex she called home, Celeste's pace slowed. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what awaited her inside. The weight of her devotion to Alaric, her husband of 10 years, sat heavy on her shoulders. She loved him deeply, but lately that love felt more like a burden than a blessing. Celeste pushed open the creaky door to their second-floor apartment, the musty air hitting her like a wall. "Alaric," she called out, her voice tentative. "I'm home." The sound of the television blared from the living room, drowning out her words. Celeste sighed, dropping her bag by the door and making her way towards the noise. There, sprawled on their threadbare couch, was Alaric. His dark hair was disheveled, his once handsome face marred by a permanent scowl. "Hey," he grunted, not taking his eyes off the screen. "You're late." Celeste's heart sank. "I picked up an extra shift at the diner," she explained, her voice soft. "We could use the extra money this month." Alaric's eyes finally flickered to her, narrowing slightly. "We wouldn't need extra money if you'd just let me pursue that business opportunity I told you about." Celeste felt a familiar knot form in her stomach. Alaric's business opportunities had a habit of draining their savings and leaving them in an even tighter spot. "Alaric, we've talked about this. We can't afford to take risks right now. We're barely making ends meet as it is." He scoffed, turning back to the TV. "That's your problem, Celeste. You're too afraid to dream big. We could be living like kings if you just trust me." The words stung, but Celeste swallowed her hurt. She'd learned long ago that arguing with Alaric when he was in one of his moods was futile. Instead, she retreated to the kitchen, determined to salvage what was left of the evening. As she prepared a simple dinner of spaghetti and meatballs, Alaric's favorite, Celeste allowed her mind to wander. She thought back to the early days of their relationship, when Alaric's ambition had seemed exciting rather than exhausting. He'd swept her off her feet with grand promises of the life they'd build together. Back then, his dreams had felt attainable, fueled by love and shared determination. But reality had a way of chipping away at dreams. Years of financial struggles and setbacks had taken their toll. While Celeste had adapted, finding contentment in small victories and the stability of honest work, Alaric seemed to retreat further into his fantasies of wealth and success. "Dinner's ready," Celeste called out, setting 2 plates on their small dining table. She heard Alaric grumble something unintelligible before the TV clicked off. He shuffled into the kitchen, his tall frame hunched as if the weight of his unfulfilled ambitions physically pressed down on him. As he sat across from her, Celeste couldn't help but notice the deep furrows in his brow, the tightness around his mouth. When had the man she loved become so bitter? They ate in silence for a while, the only sound the scraping of forks against cheap ceramic. Celeste searched for something to say, desperate to bridge the growing chasm between them. "I saw a posting for a management position at the grocery store today," she ventured. "I think I'm going to apply. The pay would be better, and we'd have health insurance." Alaric's fork clattered against his plate. "A grocery store manager? Is that really the height of your ambition, Celeste?" She flinched at the venom in his voice. "It's a good opportunity, Alaric. It would give us some breathing room." "Breathing room?" he sneered. "I don't want breathing room. I want to breathe easy. I want the life we deserve, not—" He gestured around their cramped apartment. "This." Celeste felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "I'm trying, Alaric. We're both trying. Isn't that enough?" His expression softened for a moment, a flicker of the man she'd fallen in love with shining through. He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I'm sorry, Cel. I know we're meant for more than this. Don't you believe that? She squeezed his hand, wanting desperately to believe. I do, she whispered. But sometimes I think we need to appreciate what we have now, too. Alaric's face hardened again, and he pulled his hand away. What we have isn't enough. It'll never be enough. The rest of the meal passed in tense silence. As Celeste cleared the dishes, she felt a familiar ache settle in her chest. It wasn't just the emotional toll of another argument with Alaric. There was a physical discomfort that had been plaguing her for weeks. She'd been ignoring it, chalking it up to stress and overwork. But as she stood at the sink, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The room spun, and she gripped the counter to steady herself. "Alaric," she called out, her voice shaky. I don't feel so good." She heard his exasperated sigh before he appeared in the doorway. "What now, Celeste? Another headache?" But as he took in her pale face and trembling form, concern flickered across his features. "Cel, what's wrong?" Celeste opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, her knees buckled and she crumpled to the floor. The next few hours passed in a blur of sirens, bright lights, and worried voices. Celeste drifted in and out of consciousness, catching snippets of conversation. Unexplained mass. Need to run more tests. Could be serious. When she finally came to, she found herself in a hospital bed, the sterile smell of disinfectant filling her nostrils. Alaric sat beside her, his face a mask of worry. "Hey," he said softly, taking her hand. "You gave us quite a scare." Celeste tried to smile, but fear gripped her heart. What happened?" Before Alaric could answer, a doctor entered the room, his expression grave. "Mrs. Matthews, I'm Dr. Patel. We've run some tests and, well, I'm afraid I have some difficult news." The words that followed seemed to come from far away. Cancer, advanced stage, treatment options, survival rates. Each phrase hit Celeste like a physical blow, leaving her breathless and reeling. She turned to Alaric, seeking comfort, seeking strength. But the look on his face wasn't one of support or love. It was fear, yes, but also calculation, as if he were already tallying up the cost, weighing her illness against his ambitions. In that moment, as the doctor's words hung heavy in the air and Alaric's hand grew limp in hers, Celeste realized that the true battle of her life was just beginning. And she wasn't sure if the man beside her, the man she'd pledged her life to, would be fighting alongside her or against her. The days that followed Celeste's diagnosis were a whirlwind of appointments, tests, and difficult conversations. Through it all, she clung to the hope that Alaric would step up, that her illness would awaken in him the loving, supportive partner she knew he could be. But as they sat in Dr. Patel's office discussing treatment options and their associated costs, Celeste watched Alaric's face grow harder with each passing moment. "So, what you're saying is," Alaric interrupted, his voice tight, "that even with insurance, we're looking at tens of thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket expenses?" Dr. Patel nodded solemnly. "Unfortunately, yes. Cancer treatment is expensive, and your current insurance plan has significant limitations. There are financial assistance programs we can explore, but we can't afford this," Alaric cut in, standing abruptly. "We're barely making ends meet as it is. How are we supposed to pay for all of this?" Celeste reached for his hand, her heart breaking at the panic in his voice. "Alaric, please, we'll figure it out. We have to." He pulled away from her touch, pacing the small office. "Figure it out? How, Celeste? By magic? By winning the lottery?" "Doctor." Patel cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Mr. Matthews, I understand this is overwhelming, but time is of the essence. The sooner we begin treatment, the better Mrs. Matthews' chances." "Her chances?" Alaric laughed bitterly. "What about our chances, our future, everything we've worked for?" Celeste felt as if she'd been slapped. "Alaric," she whispered, "what are you saying?" He turned to her, his eyes wild. "I'm saying that this changes everything, Celeste. All our plans, all our dreams, they're gone, just like that." Tears welled in Celeste's eyes. "But we can make new plans, together. Isn't that what marriage is about? For better or for worse?" Alaric's face twisted into a sneer. "For better or for worse? Look around, Celeste. This is definitely for worse, and I don't know if I signed up for this." The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Patel shifted uncomfortably in his chair, while Celeste stared at her husband in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't the man she'd married, the man she'd stood by through thick and thin. "Mr. Matthews," Dr. Patel finally said, his voice gentle but firm. "I think perhaps you and your wife need some time to process this information. Why don't we schedule a follow-up appointment for next week? In the meantime, I can provide you with some resources on financial assistance and support groups." Alaric nodded curtly, already heading for the door. Celeste remained rooted to her chair, her world spinning out of control. "Mrs. Matthews?" Dr. Patel's voice broke through her haze. "Are you all right?" Celeste blinked, realizing she was alone in the office with the doctor. Alaric had left without her. She swallowed hard, forcing a weak smile. I will be. Thank you, doctor." As she made her way out of the hospital, each step felt like wading through molasses. The bright Kansas City sun seemed to mock her, its warmth at odds with the cold dread settling in her stomach. She spotted Alaric, leaning against their beat-up car, his face a storm cloud of emotions. "Alaric," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk about this." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "What's there to talk about, Celeste? You're sick, we're broke, end of story." "But it doesn't have to be the end," she pleaded. "We can fight this, together." Alaric finally looked at her, and the coldness in his gaze made her shiver despite the heat. "Together? Celeste, don't you get it? There is no together anymore. This thing, it's going to drag us both down, and I won't let that happen." With those words, Celeste felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The foundation of her life, her marriage, her love, her future, was crumbling before her eyes. And as Alaric got into the car without another word, leaving her standing alone in the hospital parking lot, Celeste realized that her battle against cancer would be only one of the fights she'd face in the coming days. The drive home was silent, the air between them thick with unspoken words and shattered dreams. As they pulled up to their apartment complex, Celeste gathered her courage for one last plea. "Alaric," she said softly, "I know you're scared. I am too. But we can get through this. We've faced tough times before." He gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. "This isn't just tough times, Celeste. This is a death sentence. For you, for us, for everything we've worked for." "It doesn't have to be," she insisted, reaching for his hand. "We can—" "Stop!" He cut her off, pulling away. "Just stop. I need time to think." With that, he got out of the car and stormed into their building, leaving Celeste alone once again. She sat there for a long moment, the weight of her new reality pressing down on her. Finally, with a deep breath, she followed him inside, praying that a good night's sleep would bring clarity and compassion to her husband's heart. But as she stepped into their apartment, Celeste knew instantly that something was wrong. Alaric was throwing clothes into a suitcase, his movements frantic and purposeful. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't look at her as he continued packing. "What does it look like I'm doing, Celeste? I'm leaving." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Leaving? Alaric, you can't. We need to face this together." He zipped up the suitcase with finality, finally turning to face her. "There is no we anymore, Celeste. Can't you see that? This illness, it's going to consume everything. Our money, our time, our future. I won't let it consume me, too." Celeste felt as if she were drowning, gasping for air in a sea of betrayal. "But our vows, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, don't they mean anything to you?" Alaric's laugh was cold and bitter. "Vows? Wake up, Celeste. This isn't some fairy tale. This is real life, and in real life, people look out for themselves." He brushed past her, heading for the door. Celeste reached out, grabbing his arm in desperation. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "Don't do this. I love you. I need you." For a moment, something flickered in Alaric's eyes. A hint of the man she'd fallen in love with, a glimmer of compassion. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a steely resolve. "I'm sorry, Celeste," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "But I can't do this. I won't." With that, he shook off her grip and walked out the door, taking with him Celeste's heart, her dreams, and her last shred of hope. As the door clicked shut behind him, Celeste collapsed to the floor, her body racked with sobs. The apartment that had once been their shared haven now felt like a tomb, filled with the ghosts of broken promises and shattered dreams. In the span of a single day, Celeste had lost not only her health, but the person she'd thought would stand by her through anything. As the reality of her situation crashed over her in waves, She wondered how she would find the strength to face what lay ahead, a battle against cancer, and now, a life without the support she'd counted on for so long. Little did Celeste know that this moment of absolute despair would be the catalyst for a transformation she could never have imagined. In the depths of her darkest hour, the seeds of resilience, determination, and an unyielding spirit were being sown, seeds that would eventually grow into a force that would reshape not only her life, but the lives of those around her. As the Kansas City night settled in around her, Celeste Matthews faced an uncertain future, armed with nothing but her own strength and the flicker of a fighting spirit that refused to be extinguished. The Kansas City dawn broke, pale light filtering through the grimy windows of Celeste's apartment. She hadn't moved from the floor where she'd collapsed the night before, her body stiff and aching. As consciousness crept back, so did the crushing weight of reality. Cancer, abandonment, uncertainty. Each realization hit her anew, stealing her breath. Celeste forced herself to stand, her legs shaky. The apartment felt cavernous now, Alaric's absence a palpable void. She stumbled to the bathroom, barely recognizing the woman in the mirror, pale, hollow-eyed, a ghost of her former self. "Get it together, Celeste," she whispered to her reflection, her voice hoarse. "You don't have the luxury of falling apart." But as she turned on the shower, hoping the warm water would wash away some of her despair, a new horror awaited her. A notice taped to the inside of the bathroom door, Alaric's hasty scrawl unmistakable. "Cell, I've cleared out our joint account. Consider it severance pay for the years I wasted here. Don't try to contact me, it's over." The paper fluttered to the floor as Celeste's knees gave out. She sank to the cold tile, the shower running unheeded, and let out a primal scream of anguish and rage. How could he? How dare he? Hours passed in a haze of tears and disbelief. When Celeste finally emerged from the bathroom, the sun was high in the sky. She moved on autopilot, dressing in whatever clothes she could find, her mind racing. She had to check the bank account, had to see for herself. With trembling hands, she logged into their online banking. The balance stared back at her, a mocking zero where their modest savings had once been. Panic clawed at her throat. No money, no insurance, no job. She'd quit both her positions to focus on her treatment. And now, no Alaric. A knock at the door startled her out of her spiraling thoughts. For a wild moment, hope flared in her chest. Had Alaric come back? Had he realized his mistake? But when she opened the door, it wasn't her husband's face she saw, but the stern countenance of their landlord, Mr. Grimes. "Mrs. Matthews," he began, his voice gruff, "I hate to do this, but your rent check bounced. You know our policy on late payments." Celeste's mind raced. The rent? Of course. Alaric must have cancelled the check when he cleared out the account. "Mr. Grimes, please," she began, her voice cracking. "I'm going through a difficult time. My husband, he left, and I've just been diagnosed with cancer. If you could just give me a little more time." The landlord's face softened for a moment, but his resolve remained firm. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mrs. Matthews, truly I am. But business is business. You have 72 hours to come up with the rent, or I'll have to start eviction proceedings." As the door closed behind him, Celeste felt the walls closing in. 72 hours. 3 days to come up with money she didn't have, all while grappling with a life-threatening illness and the fresh wound of betrayal. She sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. Where could she go? Who could she turn to? Her parents had passed years ago, and she had no siblings. Alaric had always been dismissive of her making close friends, claiming they were all each other needed. Now, she saw his isolation for what it was: control. Celeste's eyes fell on her phone, sitting silent on the coffee table. With shaking hands, she picked it up, scrolling through her meager list of contacts. Her finger hovered over a name: Sarah Johnson, a regular at the diner where Celeste had worked. They'd always been friendly, sharing stories over coffee during Sarah's frequent visits. Before she could second-guess herself, Celeste hit the call button. "Hello?" Sarah's cheerful voice came through after a few rings. "Sarah, it's Celeste. Celeste Matthews from the diner. Celeste, it's so good to hear from you. How are you?" The simple question broke something in Celeste. A sob escaped her lips before she could stop it. "Oh, honey," Sarah's voice softened with concern. "What's wrong?" And so, sitting in the apartment that would soon no longer be hers, Celeste poured out her story to the one person who would listen. Sarah made sympathetic noises, gasping at Alaric's betrayal and offering words of comfort. "Celeste, this is awful. I'm so sorry you're going through this," Sarah said when Celeste had finished. "Listen, why don't you come stay with me for a few days, just until you can get things sorted out?" Relief washed over Celeste like a tidal wave. "Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden." "Nonsense," Sarah insisted. "That's what friends are for. Pack a bag, and I'll come pick you up in an hour." As Celeste threw some clothes and essentials into a suitcase, her mind whirled with a mix of gratitude and anxiety. She had a temporary reprieve, but what next? How would she afford treatment? Where would she live long-term? Sarah arrived right on time, her kind face a balm to Celeste's battered spirit. As they drove through the streets of Kansas City, Celeste felt a glimmer of hope. She wasn't alone, not completely. Sarah's modest home in the Waldo neighborhood was a far cry from the sleek apartments Alaric had always dreamed of, but to Celeste, it felt like a sanctuary. "The guest room's all yours for as long as you need it," Sarah said, showing Celeste to a small but cozy bedroom. "Now why don't you get settled and I'll make us some tea." As Celeste unpacked the few belongings she'd brought, reality began to set in once more. She was essentially homeless, penniless, and facing a battle for her life. The enormity of it all threatened to overwhelm her. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Sarah entered, carrying 2 steaming mugs of tea. "I thought you might want to talk," she said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. Celeste accepted the mug gratefully, the warmth seeping into her cold hands. "I don't even know where to start, Sarah. Everything's fallen apart so quickly." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "Let's break it down. What's the most pressing issue right now?" Celeste took a deep breath. "Treatment, I suppose. I need to start as soon as possible, but without insurance or money." "Okay," Sarah said, her tone practical. "First thing tomorrow, we'll go to the hospital and talk to their financial aid department. There are programs for people in your situation, Celeste. We'll figure it out." For the first time in days, Celeste felt a spark of hope. "Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you." Sarah squeezed her hand. "You're stronger than you know, Celeste. You'll get through this." The next morning, Celeste and Sarah made their way to the University of Kansas Hospital. The busy corridors and antiseptic smell brought back painful memories of Celeste's diagnosis, of Alaric's betrayal. She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. The financial aid office was bustling with activity. After a long wait, they were finally called in to meet with a counselor, a kind-faced woman named Linda. "Mrs. Matthews," Linda began, looking over Celeste's file. "I understand you're in a difficult situation. Let's see what we can do to help." For the next hour, they pored over paperwork, discussing options and programs. By the end, Celeste's head was spinning with information, but she had a glimmer of hope. "Based on your current financial situation," Linda explained, "you qualify for our charity care program. This will cover a significant portion of your treatment costs. For the remainder, we can set up a very modest payment plan." Celeste felt tears of relief prick her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you." Linda smiled warmly. "This is why we're here, Mrs. Matthews. Now, let's get you set up with an oncologist and start planning your treatment." As they left the hospital, Celeste felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't a complete solution, but it was a start. "See?" Sarah said, giving her a side hug. "One step at a time." But their relief was short-lived. As they approached Sarah's car, Celeste's phone rang. The screen displayed a number she didn't recognize. "Hello?" she answered hesitantly. "Is this Celeste Matthews?" a gruff voice asked. "Yes, this is she." "Mrs. Matthews, this is Detective Ramirez from the KCPD. We need to talk about your husband, Alaric Matthews." Celeste's blood ran cold. "What about him?" "Ma'am, I'm afraid there's been an incident. Your husband has been arrested for fraud and embezzlement. We need you to come down to the station to answer some questions." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Celeste gripped the car for support, her knees weak. "Celeste?" Sarah's concerned voice seemed to come from far away. "What's wrong?" As Celeste relayed the detective's message, she saw her fragile plans crumbling once more. Just when she thought she'd hit rock bottom, life had found a way to dig even deeper. The police station was a hive of activity, the harsh fluorescent lights doing nothing to calm Celeste's frayed nerves. Detective Ramirez, a stern-faced man with kind eyes, led them to a small interview room. "Mrs. Matthews," he began, his tone carefully neutral. "Were you aware of your husband's financial activities?" Celeste shook her head, still in shock. "No, we kept our finances separate. He handled most of our money." The detective nodded, making a note. "Mrs. Matthews, I'm going to be frank with you. Your husband was involved in a complex investment fraud scheme. He's implicated several people, including some of his former employers. Given the scale of the fraud, we're looking at significant prison time." Celeste felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. "I don't understand. How long has this been going on?" "From what we can tell, at least 3 years," Ramirez replied. "Mrs. Matthews, I have to ask, did you benefit from any of this fraudulent activity?" The implication hit Celeste like a physical blow. "No," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "Detective, I had no idea. I worked 2 jobs just to make ends meet. My husband, he left me 3 days ago, right after I was diagnosed with cancer. He cleaned out our bank account. I'm facing eviction. Does that sound like someone who was benefiting from fraud?" Ramirez's expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mrs. Matthews. We'll need to verify your story, of course, but for now we don't consider you a suspect. However, I'm afraid this isn't the end of your troubles." "What do you mean?" Celeste asked, dread settling in her stomach. "The authorities will be freezing all assets connected to your husband, including any joint accounts or property. It's standard procedure in cases like this." Celeste let out a bitter laugh. "He already cleared out our account. There's nothing left to freeze." Sarah, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Detective, what about their apartment? Celeste's belongings?" Ramirez sighed. "I'm afraid those will be considered part of the investigation for now." "Mrs. Matthews, do you have somewhere to stay?" Celeste nodded numbly, gesturing to Sarah. "My friend has been kind enough to take me in." "Good," Ramirez said. "I'm truly sorry you're caught up in this, Mrs. Matthews. We'll do our best to expedite the process of clearing your name and releasing any personal belongings not connected to the fraud. In the meantime, here's my card. If you think of anything that might be relevant to the case, please don't hesitate to call." As they left the police station, Celeste felt as if she were walking in a fog. Everything she'd known, everything she'd built her life around, had been a lie. She was worse than broke. She was potentially implicated in a crime she knew nothing about. "Celeste?" Sarah's voice broke through her haze. "What do you want to do now?" Celeste looked at her friend, feeling more lost than she ever had in her life. "I don't know, Sarah. I honestly don't know." The days that followed were a blur of appointments, paperwork, and sleepless nights. Celeste began her cancer treatment, the harsh chemicals coursing through her body, leaving her weak and nauseous. Sarah was a constant source of support, driving her to appointments and holding her hair back when the side effects became too much. But even as Celeste fought for her health, the specter of Alaric's crimes loomed large. She was questioned multiple times by various authorities, each interview leaving her drained and shaken. Her name was cleared eventually, but the process was long and humiliating. One particularly difficult day, after a grueling chemo session and another round of questioning, Celeste found herself sitting in a small park near Sarah's house. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching under her feet as she tried to find a moment of peace. "Is this seat taken?" a voice asked. Celeste looked up to see an elderly woman smiling down at her. Despite her fatigue, Celeste managed a small smile in return. "No, please, sit." The woman lowered herself onto the bench with a soft groan. "Ah, these old bones, not as spry as they used to be." She turned to Celeste, her eyes kind but piercing. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world, dear." Something about the woman's gentle demeanor broke through Celeste's carefully constructed walls. Before she knew it, she was pouring out her story to this stranger. Her illness, Alaric's betrayal, the fraud, her uncertain future. The woman listened intently, nodding at times, her face a mix of sympathy and something else. Admiration, perhaps. When Celeste finished, the woman was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took Celeste's hand in her own weathered one. "My dear," she said, her voice soft but firm, "you are so much stronger than you know. Life has dealt you a terrible hand, but you're still here, still fighting. That's no small thing." Celeste felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't feel strong. I feel lost, broken." The woman squeezed her hand. "Strength isn't about never breaking, dear. It's about how you put yourself back together. And from what I can see, you're doing just that piece by piece." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park. The woman stood to leave. "What's your name, dear?" Celeste asked, realizing she'd never introduced herself. The woman smiled, a twinkle in her eye. Vivienne Moreau. Remember that name, Celeste. Something tells me our paths will cross again." As Vivienne walked away, her words echoing in Celeste's mind, she felt something stir within her, a spark of determination, of resilience. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time since her world had fallen apart, she felt ready to face it. Little did Celeste know that this chance encounter in the park would be the first step on a journey that would transform her life in ways she could never have imagined. As she made her way back to Sarah's house, the autumn wind whispering through the trees, the seeds of a new chapter in her life were beginning to take root. The following weeks brought new challenges and unexpected allies. Celeste's treatment continued, each session a battle against not just the cancer in her body, but the despair that threatened to consume her spirit. Sarah remained a steadfast support, but Celeste could see the toll her situation was taking on her friend. One evening, as they sat in Sarah's small living room, the TV murmuring in the background, Celeste broached the subject that had been weighing on her mind. "Sarah," she began hesitantly, "I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for me, but I can't keep imposing on you like this." Sarah's brow furrowed. "Celeste, you're not imposing. You're my friend, and you're going through hell. Where else would you go?" Celeste sighed, running a hand through her thinning hair, another stark reminder of her illness. "I don't know, but I need to figure something out. I can't keep living off your kindness forever." Before Sarah could respond, a news segment caught their attention. A reporter stood outside a familiar building, Alaric's former workplace. "In an update to the ongoing Midwest financial fraud case," the reporter announced, "sources close to the investigation reveal that the scope of the embezzlement scheme may be even larger than initially thought. Alaric Matthews, the primary suspect, is now believed to have defrauded investors of over $50 million. Celeste felt the blood drain from her face. $50 million. The number was staggering, incomprehensible. How could Alaric have hidden something of this magnitude from her? Sarah muted the TV, turning to Celeste with concern etched on her face. "Are you okay?" Celeste shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "I lived with him for 10 years, Sarah. How could I not have known?" "Hey," Sarah said firmly, taking Celeste's hands in hers. "This is not your fault. Alaric fooled a lot of people, including professional investors and regulators. You can't blame yourself for his actions." But Celeste couldn't shake the feeling of guilt and shame that washed over her. Even as her rational mind knew Sarah was right, a part of her wondered if she should have seen the signs, if she could have stopped this somehow. The ringing of Celeste's phone cut through the tense silence. She answered it with trepidation, half expecting more bad news. "Mrs. Matthews?" a familiar voice said. "This is Linda from the hospital's financial aid office. I hope I'm not calling too late." "No, not at all," Celeste replied, her mind racing. Had there been a problem with her application? Was she about to lose her treatment coverage too? "I'm calling because there's been a development in your case," Linda continued. "A private donor has come forward, offering to cover the remainder of your treatment costs not covered by our charity care program." Celeste's breath caught in her throat. "What? Who would do that?" "The donor wishes to remain anonymous," Linda explained, "but they were quite insistent. They've set up a fund to cover not just your medical expenses, but also a modest living stipend while you undergo treatment." Tears welled up in Celeste's eyes, a mix of relief and disbelief overwhelming her. I don't know what to say. It's incredible." "It certainly is," Linda agreed, her voice warm. "Sometimes, Mrs. Matthews, when we're at our lowest, the universe has a way of reminding us that there's still good in the world. I'll send over the paperwork for you to sign tomorrow. Take care and try to get some rest." As Celeste ended the call, she looked up to see Sarah watching her expectantly. Through tears, she relayed the news of the anonymous donor. Sarah's face lit up with joy. "Oh, Celeste, this is wonderful news. See, things are looking up already." But even as Celeste allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of her mind. Who was this mysterious benefactor, and why her, of all people? The next morning, Celeste woke early, her mind still buzzing with questions about the anonymous donor. As she sipped her coffee, Staring out at the Kansas City skyline, a memory tickled at the edges of her consciousness. Something about the park, about a conversation. Her eyes widened as realization struck. Vivienne Moreau. Could it be? But why would a stranger she met in the park make such a generous gesture? Celeste's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Sarah, still in her pajamas, went to answer it. Celeste heard murmured conversation. Then Sarah called out, "Celeste, there's someone here to see you." Curious and a little apprehensive, Celeste made her way to the front door. There, standing on the porch with an enigmatic smile, was Vivienne Moreau. "Good morning, Celeste," Vivienne said, her eyes twinkling. "I think it's time we had a proper chat, don't you?" Celeste stood frozen for a moment, her mind whirling. Finally, she found her voice. "Mrs. Moreau, was it you? The anonymous donor?" Vivienne's smile widened. "Perceptive. That's good. You're going to need that quality in the days ahead." "I don't understand," Celeste said, confusion evident in her voice. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." "Ah, but I'd like to," Vivienne replied. "May I come in? I have a proposition for you, Celeste, one that could change everything." As Celeste stepped aside to let Vivienne enter, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the precipice of something monumental. Little did she know that this conversation would be the catalyst for a transformation beyond her wildest dreams, setting in motion a chain of events that would not only reshape her life, but also bring her face to face with a chance for the ultimate redemption, or revenge. The living room felt charged with an electric anticipation as Celeste, Sarah, and Vivienne settled in. Vivienne's piercing gaze swept over the modest surroundings before landing on Celeste, a hint of approval in her eyes. "First," Vivienne began, her voice carrying a quiet authority, "let me properly introduce myself. I'm Vivienne Moreau, CEO of Moreau Enterprises. We specialize in turning around failing businesses and occasionally people's lives." Celeste's eyes widened in recognition. Moreau Enterprises was a powerhouse in the Kansas City business world, known for its shrewd investments and philanthropic efforts. "Mrs. Moreau," Celeste started, "I'm grateful for your generosity, but I don't understand." "Why me?" Vivienne leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Because, Celeste, I see in you something rare, a resilience that can't be taught, a strength that adversity has forged rather than broken, and, if I'm not mistaken, a burning desire to reclaim your life on your own terms." Celeste felt exposed under Vivienne's penetrating gaze, as if the older woman could see right through to her core. "But what could I possibly offer someone like you?" A smile played at the corners of Vivienne's lips. "More than you realize. Celeste, I'm offering you a job. Not just any job, but a chance to rebuild your life from the ground up, to learn the intricacies of the business world, to understand the very system your husband exploited." The proposition hung in the air, tantalizing and terrifying in equal measure. Sarah, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "What exactly would this job entail?" "To start, an entry-level position in our financial analysis department," Vivienne explained. "You'll learn every aspect of our business from the ground up. It won't be easy, Celeste. You'll be working full-time while undergoing your treatments. But I believe you're up to the challenge." Celeste's mind raced. The offer was incredible, almost too good to be true, but a niggling doubt persisted. "Mrs. Moreau, why would you take such a risk on someone like me? Someone with no business experience, someone tainted by association with a massive fraud?" Vivienne's expression softened slightly. "Because, my dear, sometimes the best way to understand a system is to have been burned by it. Your experience, painful as it is, gives you a unique perspective. And as for the risk," her eyes twinkled, "let's just say I have a knack for spotting potential." As Celeste absorbed Vivienne's words, a spark of something long dormant ignited within her. Hope, yes, but also determination. A chance to reclaim her narrative, to transform herself into someone who could never be victimized again. I don't know what to say," Celeste finally managed, her voice thick with emotion. "Say yes," Vivienne replied simply. "Say yes to reclaiming your life, to becoming a force to be reckoned with in your own right." Celeste looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly, then back to Vivienne. Drawing a deep breath, she squared her shoulders and met the older woman's gaze. "Yes, I accept your offer, Mrs. Moreau." A satisfied smile spread across Vivienne's face. "Excellent," We'll start tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp." She stood, smoothing her impeccable suit. "Oh, and Celeste? Call me Vivian. I have a feeling we're going to accomplish great things together." As Vivian saw herself out, Celeste remained rooted to her seat, the magnitude of what had just transpired washing over her. Sarah squeezed her hand, her face beaming with pride and excitement. "Celeste, this is amazing. It's like a second chance," Celeste finished, her voice barely above a whisper. "A chance to rewrite my story." As the day progressed, Celeste's initial shock gave way to a whirlwind of emotions. Excitement warred with apprehension, determination with self-doubt. Could she really do this? Transform herself from a betrayed, sick woman into a business professional? That evening, as she packed a small bag for her first day at Moreau Enterprises, Celeste caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was pale, her hair thinned from chemotherapy, her eyes shadowed with the weight of recent traumas. But there was something else there too, a fire, a resolve that hadn't been present before. "You can do this," she told her reflection firmly. "You will do this." The next morning dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself was endorsing Celeste's new beginning. She dressed carefully in the most professional outfit she could cobble together from her limited wardrobe, acutely aware of how out of place she might look in the corporate world. Sarah drove her to the imposing Moreau Enterprises building in downtown Kansas City, its glass and steel facade gleaming in the morning sun. "How you've got this, Celeste," Sarah said, giving her a quick hug before she got out of the car. "Remember, Vivienne chose you for a reason. Believe in yourself." With a deep breath, Celeste stepped into the lobby, the click of her modest heels on the polished marble floor echoing her racing heartbeat. A young woman at the reception desk greeted her with a warm smile. "Mrs. Matthews, welcome to Moreau Enterprises. I'm Amy. Mrs. Moreau asked me to show you to your department." As Amy led her through a maze of corridors and up several floors in a sleek elevator, Celeste tried to take in every detail. The offices were a hive of activity, people moving with purpose, the air buzzing with energy and ambition. Finally, they arrived at a large open-plan office. "This is the financial analysis department," Amy explained. "And this," she gestured to a small desk in the corner, "is your workspace." Celeste nodded, trying to quell the butterflies in her stomach. "Thank you, Amy." As Amy left, a tall man with salt and pepper hair approached, his hand extended. "Mrs. Matthews, I'm David Chen, head of financial analysis. Welcome to the team." Celeste shook his hand, noting the firm grip and assessing gaze. "Thank you, Mr. Chen. I'm looking forward to learning." David's eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. "I hope that enthusiasm lasts. We've got you starting with our basic training modules today. It's dry stuff, but essential. Any questions before we begin?" Celeste hesitated for a moment, then decided honesty was the best policy. "Just one, Mr. Chen. I'm sure you know about my situation, about my husband's crimes. I guess I'm wondering how that affects things here." David's expression turned serious. "Mrs. Matthews, let me be clear. What your husband did was reprehensible, but you're not him. Mrs. Moreau has vouched for you, and that carries a lot of weight around here. You'll be judged solely on your own merits and actions." "Understood." Relief washed over Celeste. "Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chen." As David walked her through the day's tasks, Celeste felt a growing sense of purpose. The work was indeed dry, endless spreadsheets and financial terms that made her head spin, but she attacked it with a fervor that surprised even herself. By the end of the day, Celeste was exhausted, but exhilarated. As she packed up her things, a shadow fell across her desk. She looked up to see Vivian standing there, an enigmatic smile on her face. "How was your first day, Celeste?" "Challenging," Celeste admitted, "but in the best way possible. I have so much to learn, but I'm ready for it." Vivian nodded approvingly. "Good, because this is just the beginning. Remember, Celeste, knowledge is power, and in time, you'll have both in spades." As Celeste left the building that evening, the setting sun painting the Kansas City skyline in hues of gold and pink, she felt a shift within herself. The woman who had entered that morning, scared, unsure, defined by her past, was already beginning to fade. In her place was emerging someone new, someone determined to shape her own destiny. Little did Celeste know that this day marked the first step on a path that would lead her not just to professional success, but to a crossroads where she would have to choose between redemption and revenge. The lessons she would learn, the skills she would acquire, would one day bring her face to face with the man who had betrayed her, and the decision she would make in that moment would change everything. But for now, as she made her way back to Sarah's house, Celeste allowed herself to feel something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Hope for her health, hope for her future, and hope that maybe, just maybe, she could turn this second chance into something truly extraordinary. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of new experiences and challenges for Celeste. Each day brought a fresh set of obstacles to overcome, from mastering complex financial software to understanding the intricacies of corporate law. The work was demanding, often leaving her mentally exhausted by day's end. But even as she struggled with the steep learning curve, Celeste found herself thriving in ways she never thought possible. Her colleagues in the financial analysis department, initially wary of the newcomer with the controversial background, gradually warmed to her determination and quick wit. David Chen, in particular, became something of a mentor, always ready with a word of encouragement or a challenging new task to push her boundaries. One afternoon, about a month into her new role, David called Celeste into his office. Her heart raced, wondering if she had made some crucial mistake in her latest report. "Relax, Celeste," David said, noting her tense posture. "You're not in trouble, quite the opposite, in fact. I wanted to commend you on your work so far. Your attention to detail and ability to spot patterns is impressive, especially for someone new to the field." Celeste felt a flush of pride at his words. "Thank you, Mr. Chen. I'm trying my best to learn as quickly as I can." David leaned back in his chair, studying her thoughtfully. "That's evident. Which is why I have a proposition for you. We have a new project coming up, a comprehensive audit of a company we're considering acquiring. It's complex work, usually reserved for more experienced analysts, but I think you're ready for the challenge. Are you interested?" Celeste's eyes widened. This was a huge opportunity, a chance to prove herself on a significant project, but doubt niggled at the back of her mind. "Are you sure I'm ready for this, Mr. Chen? I wouldn't want to jeopardize the project." David's expression softened. "Celeste, in the short time you've been here, you've shown more drive and aptitude than some analysts I've worked with for years. Plus," he added with a wry smile, "you have a unique perspective that could be valuable. Sometimes it takes someone who's seen the dark side of finance to spot the cracks in a seemingly flawless facade." His words struck a chord deep within Celeste. She thought of Alaric, of the web of lies and deceit he had woven. Could her painful experience actually be an asset in this new world she was navigating? Drawing a deep breath, Celeste met David's gaze with newfound resolve. "I'm in, Mr. Chen. I won't let you down." As she dove into the new project, Celeste found herself working longer hours, often staying at the office long after her colleagues had left for the day. The complexity of the work was daunting, but she attacked it with a fervor that surprised even herself. One evening, as she pored over financial statements, searching for discrepancies, a shadow fell across her desk. Looking up, she found Vivian standing there, an approving smile on her face. "Burning the midnight oil, I see," Vivian remarked, settling into a chair beside Celeste's desk. Celeste straightened, suddenly aware of her rumpled appearance and the late hour. "Mrs. Moreau, Vivian, I didn't realize anyone else was still here." Vivian waved away her concern. "I often work late. The quiet helps me think." She gestured to the stack of papers on Celeste's desk. "The Anderson acquisition project, I presume. David told me he'd assigned you to the team." Celeste nodded, a mix of pride and nervousness coloring her voice. "Yes, it's fascinating work. Challenging, but I'm learning so much." Vivian's eyes sparkled with interest. "And what have you learned so far, Celeste? What does your instinct tell you about Anderson Corp?" Celeste hesitated for a moment, gathering her thoughts. This was her chance to impress Vivian, to show her that her faith hadn't been misplaced. "Well, on the surface everything looks pristine. Their financials are strong, their growth projections are ambitious, but not unrealistic. But, Vivian prompted, leaning forward slightly. "But there's something that doesn't quite add up," Celeste continued, her confidence growing as she spoke. "Their accounts receivable turnover is too perfect. It's consistent across all quarters, all divisions. In my experience, limited as it may be, real businesses have fluctuations, seasonal changes. This level of consistency feels manufactured." A slow smile spread across Vivian's face. "Very good, Celeste. Very good indeed. You've spotted something that even some of our more experienced analysts missed. Trust that instinct. It will serve you well in this business." Celeste felt a warmth spread through her chest at Vivian's praise. For so long she had doubted herself, let others define her worth. But here, in this new world, she was starting to recognize her own value. Vivian stood, smoothing her impeccable suit. "Don't stay too late, Celeste. Brilliant minds need rest too." She paused at the door, turning back with a thoughtful expression. "You know, you remind me a bit of myself when I was younger. Hungry for knowledge, determined to prove yourself. Keep that fire burning, but don't let it consume you." As Vivian's footsteps faded down the hallway, Celeste sat back in her chair, her mind whirling. The comparison to a younger Vivian both thrilled and terrified her. Could she really follow in the footsteps of such a formidable woman? The next few weeks were a blur of intense work and late nights. Celeste threw herself into the Anderson project with renewed vigor, her initial hunch leading her down a rabbit hole of financial detective work. She cross-referenced data, analyzed trends, and slowly but surely, a picture began to emerge. Finally, after what felt like countless cups of coffee and sleepless nights, Celeste felt ready to present her findings. With trembling hands, she knocked on David's office door. "Come in," he called. Taking a deep breath, Celeste entered, clutching her report tightly. "Mr. Chen, I think I've found something significant in the Anderson financials, something that could change everything about this acquisition." David's eyebrows rose as he took in her serious expression. "All right, Celeste, let's hear it." For the next hour, Celeste laid out her findings, pointing out discrepancies, explaining her reasoning, and presenting her conclusions. As she spoke, she saw David's expression shift from skepticism to surprise to grudging admiration. When she finished, David was silent for a long moment, studying the documents spread across his desk. Finally, he looked up, a grim smile on his face. "Celeste, I think you've just saved Moreau Enterprises from making a very expensive mistake. This level of financial manipulation, it's sophisticated. If we hadn't caught it, we could have been embroiled in a scandal that would have made your husband's fraud look like petty theft." Celeste felt a rush of emotions, pride at her accomplishment, vindication of her instincts, and a twinge of pain at the reminder of Alaric. But mostly, she felt a sense of purpose, of having found her place in this new world. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. David stood, gathering the papers. "Now we take this to Vivian, and Celeste, you'll be the one presenting these findings. You've earned that right." As they made their way to Vivian's office, Celeste felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was her moment to shine, to prove once and for all that she belonged in this world. But as she prepared to step into Vivian's office, a stray thought crossed her mind, a realization that the skills she was developing, the knowledge she was gaining, could be used for more than just corporate success. They could, if she chose, be weapons of a different kind. For a brief moment, Celeste allowed herself to imagine using these newfound abilities to track down Alaric, to make him pay for his betrayal. The thought was intoxicating, tempting in its promise of justice. Or was it revenge? But as Vivian's voice called them in, Celeste pushed the thought aside. She had worked too hard, come too far, to let the ghosts of her past dictate her future. Whatever path she chose from here on out, it would be on her terms, guided by her own moral compass. With that resolve firmly in place, Celeste stepped into Vivian's office, ready to present her findings and embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. The woman who entered that room was a far cry from the broken, desperate soul who had once sat on a park bench, pouring out her troubles to a stranger. This Celeste was confident, capable, and above all, in control of her own destiny. Little did she know that the decisions she would make in the coming months would not only shape her future, but would set her on a collision course with her past, forcing her to confront the fine line between justice and vengeance. As Celeste stepped into Vivian's office, the atmosphere shifted palpably. The room, with its panoramic views of the Kansas City skyline, exuded power and sophistication. Vivian sat behind an imposing mahogany desk, her piercing gaze fixed on Celeste as she and David entered. "I understand you have something important to share with us, Celeste," Vivian said, her tone neutral, but her eyes alight with interest. Celeste took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. This was her moment, the culmination of weeks of hard work and sleepless nights. She laid out her findings methodically, her voice growing stronger with each point she made. As she spoke, she watched Vivian's expression change from polite interest to intense focus. When Celeste finished her presentation, silence fell over the room. Vivian leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled under her chin. For a long moment, she said nothing, and Celeste felt her heart pounding in her chest. Finally, Vivian spoke. "Celeste, what you've uncovered here is remarkable. Not just the fraud itself, but the way you pieced it together. It's impressive work." Relief washed over Celeste, but Vivian wasn't finished. "Tell me," she continued, her gaze intensifying, "what do you think we should do with this information?" Celeste blinked, caught off guard by the question. She had been so focused on uncovering the truth, she hadn't considered the next steps. But as she thought about it, a clarity she hadn't expected settled over her. "We should confront Anderson Corp with our findings," she said, her voice steady. "But not publicly, not yet. We use this knowledge as leverage. We can negotiate a much better deal for ourselves, knowing what we know. And once the acquisition is complete, we clean house, root out the corruption from the inside." Vivian's eyebrows rose slightly, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Shrewd, Celeste. Very shrewd indeed. And what about the legal implications, the ethical considerations?" Celeste felt David tense beside her, but she held her ground. "Legally, we're on solid footing. We discovered this through due diligence, not corporate espionage. Ethically, well, we have a responsibility to our shareholders to make sound business decisions, but we also have a broader responsibility to the market. By acquiring Anderson and cleaning it up, we're not just protecting our interests, we're preventing future harm." Vivian's smile widened. "David," she said, not taking her eyes off Celeste, "I think we've found our new rising star. Well done, both of you. I want a full action plan on my desk by tomorrow afternoon. Celeste, you'll lead the team on this." As they left Vivian's office, David turned to Celeste, his expression a mix of pride and awe. "I've never seen anyone impress Vivian like that on their first big presentation. You're going places, Celeste." Celeste felt a surge of pride, but also a twinge of something else. Excitement, yes, but also a kind of power she'd never experienced before. She was good at this, really good, and for the first time in her life she felt truly in control. Over the next few months, Celeste threw herself into her work with renewed vigor. The Anderson acquisition became her primary focus, and she attacked it with a determination that both impressed and slightly unnerved her colleagues. She worked long hours, often being the first to arrive and the last to leave. One evening, as she was poring over some final documents before the acquisition was set to close, Vivian appeared at her desk. "Walk with me, Celeste," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. They made their way to the building's rooftop garden, a hidden oasis high above the bustling city. As they stood looking out over the twinkling lights of Kansas City, Vivian turned to Celeste. "You've done exceptional work on this acquisition," she began. "But I'm concerned. You're pushing yourself too hard. There's a fire in you, Celeste, and that's good. But if you're not careful, it will consume you." Celeste felt a flash of defensiveness. "I'm fine, Vivian. I can handle the workload." Vivian's expression softened. "This isn't about the workload, Celeste. It's about balance, about remembering why we do what we do." "I know why I'm doing this," Celeste insisted. "I'm building a new life for myself, proving that I'm more than just Alaric's ex-wife or a cancer survivor." "Are you?" Vivian asked, her voice gentle but probing. "Or are you running from something? Trying to outpace your past?" The words hit Celeste like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to protest, but found she couldn't form the words. Vivian had seen right through her. "Celeste," Vivian continued, placing a hand on her shoulder, "you have an incredible gift. You see patterns others miss. You understand the complexities of human nature in a way that makes you uniquely suited to this work. But that gift comes with a responsibility, not just to the company, but to yourself." Tears pricked at the corners of Celeste's eyes. "I don't know how to slow down," she admitted. "If I stop, if I let myself think too much, everything catches up with me. The betrayal, the illness, the fear." Vivian nodded, understanding. "I know that feeling all too well. But let me tell you a story, Celeste. A story about a young woman who was once where you are now." As the city hummed below them, Vivian shared her own tale of loss, betrayal, and redemption. She spoke of her early days in business, of the men who underestimated her, of the deals that nearly broke her. But most importantly, she spoke of the moment she realized that true power came not from outrunning her past, but from embracing it, learning from it and using it to fuel her future. You see, Celeste, Vivian concluded, our past shapes us, but it doesn't define us. The pain you've experienced, the betrayal you've endured, these aren't weaknesses, they're tools. Use them wisely and there's no limit to what you can achieve. As Vivian's words sank in, Celeste felt something shift within her. The frantic energy that had been driving her for months began to settle into a calmer, more focused determination. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vivian smiled, a mixture of warmth and challenge in her eyes. "Now, you take the next step. You've proven you can do the work. It's time to prove you can lead. I'm putting you in charge of the post-acquisition integration team for Anderson Corp. It's a big job, Celeste. You'll be responsible for rooting out the corruption, restructuring the company, and turning it into a valuable asset for Moreau Enterprises." Celeste's eyes widened. "Are you sure I'm ready for that?" "I'm sure," Vivian said firmly. "But more importantly, are you?" Celeste took a deep breath, looking out over the city. She thought about how far she'd come, about the strength she'd found within herself. She thought about Alaric, about the life she'd left behind, and she thought about the future stretching out before her, full of possibilities she'd never dared to imagine. "Yes," she said finally, her voice strong and clear. "I'm ready." Vivian nodded approvingly. "Good, because this isn't just about business, Celeste. This is about justice, about setting things right. The skills you've developed here, the insights you've gained, they give you the power to make real change, to prevent others from suffering the way you have." As Vivian's words sank in, Celeste felt a new sense of purpose wash over her. This wasn't just about proving herself anymore. It was about using her experiences, her pain, her newfound knowledge to make a difference, to right wrongs and protect others from the kind of betrayal she had endured. "Thank you, Vivian," Celeste said, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything, for giving me this chance, for believing in me." Vivian squeezed her shoulder gently. "You've earned it, Celeste. Now go out there and show the world what you're capable of." As they made their way back inside, Celeste's mind was already racing with plans and ideas. She had a new mission now, a higher purpose that went beyond personal success or revenge. She would use her position, her skills, her unique perspective to root out corruption and protect others from financial predators like Alaric. The next morning, Celeste arrived at the office with a renewed sense of purpose. As she settled into her new role leading the Anderson Corp integration team, she felt a strength and clarity she had never experienced before. She assembled her team, a mix of financial analysts, legal experts, and operations specialists, and laid out her vision for the project. "We're not just here to restructure a company," she told them, her voice firm and confident. "We're here to set a new standard for corporate integrity. Every decision we make, every policy we implement, will be aimed at creating a transparent, ethical organization that can serve as a model for the entire industry." As the weeks passed, Celeste threw herself into the work with a passion that inspired her team. She pored over financial records, interviewed employees at all levels, and systematically dismantled the corrupt practices that had taken root in Anderson Corp. One afternoon, as she was reviewing a particularly complex set of transactions, a familiar name caught her eye. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized she was looking at evidence of Alaric's involvement in Anderson's fraudulent activities. For a moment, old emotions threatened to overwhelm her. The pain of his betrayal, the anger at his callousness, the fear and uncertainty he had left her with, it all came rushing back. But then she remembered Vivian's words on the rooftop. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. With steady hands, Celeste compiled the evidence and brought it to Vivian. "We need to turn this over to the authorities," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "It's not just about Alaric anymore. There could be other victims out there, other lives he's ruined." Vivian studied her for a long moment, then nodded approvingly. "You've come a long way, Celeste. I'm proud of you." As they worked with law enforcement to bring Alaric and his co-conspirators to justice, Celeste felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. She was no longer defined by what had been done to her, but by what she was choosing to do in response. Months passed, and under Celeste's leadership, Anderson Corp underwent a dramatic transformation. The corrupt elements were rooted out, ethical practices were implemented at every level, and the company began to thrive in ways it never had before. One evening, as Celeste was preparing to leave the office, Vivienne appeared at her door. "Walk with me," she said, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. They made their way once again to the rooftop garden. The Kansas City skyline sparkled before them, a testament to the bustling world of business and opportunity that Celeste had become a part of. "Do you remember the last time we stood here?" Vivienne asked, her eyes twinkling. Celeste nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "How could I forget? It was the night you gave me my big break. And look how far you've come since then," Vivienne said, pride evident in her voice. "You've exceeded every expectation, Celeste. You've not only turned Anderson Corp around, but you've set a new standard for ethical business practices in our industry." Celeste felt a warmth spread through her chest at Vivienne's praise. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance, Vivienne." "Oh, I think you could have," Vivienne chuckled, "but I'm glad I got to be a part of your journey." She paused, her expression turning more serious. "Which brings me to why I brought you up here tonight. I have a proposition for you, Celeste." Celeste's heart quickened. "What kind of proposition?" Vivienne turned to face her fully, her gaze intense. "I want you to become my protégé, to groom you to eventually take over as CEO of Moreau Enterprises." Celeste felt as if the ground had dropped out from under her. "Me? But I've only been here for a little over a year. Surely there are others more qualified." "Qualifications aren't just about years of experience, Celeste," Vivienne interrupted gently. "They're about vision, integrity, and the ability to lead. You've shown all of those qualities in spades. You have a unique perspective that this company, that this industry, needs." As the implications of Vivienne's offer sank in, Celeste felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was more than just a career opportunity. It was a chance to make a real difference, to shape the future of business ethics on a grand scale. I don't know what to say," Celeste stammered. Vivienne smiled warmly. "Say yes, Celeste. Say yes to becoming the woman I know you can be. The woman who will not only lead this company but change the face of corporate America." In that moment, standing high above the city she had once felt so lost in, Celeste saw her future unfold before her. It wasn't just about personal success anymore. It was about using her experiences, her pain, her newfound knowledge to create lasting change, to build a legacy that would protect others from the kind of betrayal and hardship she had endured. Drawing a deep breath, Celeste met Vivienne's gaze with newfound determination. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Yes, I accept." As they shook hands, sealing the agreement that would shape both their futures, Celeste felt a sense of purpose, unlike anything she had ever known. She had entered Moreau Enterprises as a broken woman seeking a second chance. Now she stood on the precipice of becoming a force for change in the very world that had once threatened to destroy her. Little did Celeste know that this moment of triumph was just the beginning. The path ahead would test her in ways she couldn't imagine, forcing her to confront not only the ghosts of her past, but also the moral complexities of power and justice in the cutthroat world of high finance. The woman who had risen from the ashes of betrayal was about to face her greatest challenges yet, challenges that would ultimately define not just her career, but her very soul. The months that followed Vivienne's momentous offer were a whirlwind of activity for Celeste. As she stepped into her new role as Vivienne's protégé, she found herself juggling an increasingly demanding workload with her ongoing cancer treatments. The duality of her life, corporate warrior by day, patient by night, became a stark reminder of how far she'd come and how far she still had to go. One crisp autumn morning, Celeste sat in the sterile environment of the oncology ward, the steady drip of her chemotherapy a counterpoint to the rapid-fire email she was sending on her tablet. A nurse approached, a concerned frown creasing her forehead. "Mrs. Matthews," she began gently, "you know it's important to rest during your treatments." Celeste looked up, offering a wan smile. "I know, Marie, but there's so much to do. The Harrison merger won't wait just because my body's fighting a war." Marie's frown deepened. "Your body needs all its energy for that war, Celeste. The business world will still be there when you're done." As Marie moved on to her next patient, Celeste leaned back in her chair, her mind wandering to the conversation she'd had with Vivienne just the day before. "Celeste," Vivienne had said, her voice a mix of admiration and concern, "your dedication is commendable, But you need to pace yourself. This isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. I know, Vivian, Celeste had replied, struggling to keep the frustration out of her voice. But I can't afford to slow down, not now, not when we're so close to closing the Harrison deal. Vivian's eyes had softened then. Celeste, do you know why I chose you as my protégé? The question had caught Celeste off guard. Because of my work ethic? My ability to spot financial discrepancies? Those are part of it, Vivian had agreed. But more importantly, it's because of your humanity, your ability to see beyond the numbers to the people they represent. Don't lose that in your drive to prove yourself. Now, as the chemotherapy drugs coursed through her veins, Celeste pondered Vivian's words. Had she been pushing too hard, losing sight of the bigger picture in her determination to succeed? Her musings were interrupted by a notification on her tablet. A news alert, featuring a familiar face that still had the power to make her heart clench. Alaric. Former financial advisor Alaric Matthews pleaded guilty today to multiple charges of fraud and embezzlement, the article began. Matthews, once a rising star in the Kansas City financial scene, now faces up to 20 years in federal prison. Celeste stared at the screen, a tumult of emotions washing over her. There was a time when news of Alaric's downfall would have filled her with vindictive pleasure. Now she felt, what? Pity, regret, or perhaps just a profound sense of how much she had changed. Later that evening, as Celeste prepared to leave the office, she found Vivian waiting by the elevator. How are you feeling? Vivian asked, her eyes scanning Celeste's pale face. I'm fine, Celeste started to say automatically, then caught herself. Actually, I'm exhausted, but I didn't want to let it show. Vivian nodded approvingly. Honesty, that's good. It's a strength, not a weakness, Celeste, remember that. She gestured to the elevator. Come on, I'm taking you to dinner. As they settled into a quiet booth at Vivian's favorite restaurant, Celeste felt some of the day's tension begin to ebb away. Vivian ordered for both of them, then fixed Celeste with a penetrating gaze. I saw the news about Alaric, she said without preamble. How are you handling it? Celeste took a sip of water, buying herself a moment to gather her thoughts. Honestly, I'm not sure. Part of me feels like I should be celebrating. He hurt me, betrayed me, left me when I needed him most. But, Vivian prompted gently. But I don't feel anything close to happiness, Celeste admitted. I look at where he is now and where I am, and it just feels sad, like a waste. Vivian nodded slowly. That's a very mature perspective, Celeste. Many in your position would be reveling in their enemy's downfall. Is that what he is? Celeste mused. My enemy, he was my husband, Vivian. For better or worse, he was part of shaping who I am today. And who are you today, Celeste? Vivian asked, her tone curious. Celeste paused, really considering the question. I'm a survivor, she said finally. Of cancer, of betrayal, of near financial ruin. But I'm also more than that. I'm a businesswoman, a leader. I'm someone who has the power to make a difference. A slow smile spread across Vivian's face. Yes, you are. And that's precisely why I know you're ready for your next challenge. Celeste's eyebrows rose. What did you have in mind? The Edison Group, Vivian said, her eyes glinting. They've been on our radar for a while now. Rumors of unethical practices, possible fraud. I want you to lead the investigation. Celeste felt a surge of excitement, quickly followed by a wave of apprehension. The Edison Group, but they're one of the largest financial institutions in the Midwest. Taking them on would be dangerous, difficult, potentially career-defining. Vivian finished for her. Yes to all of the above, but if anyone can unravel their secrets, it's you, Celeste. You have the skills, the insight, and most importantly, the moral compass to see this through. As their food arrived, Celeste's mind raced with the implications of what Vivian was proposing. This wasn't just another corporate investigation. This was a chance to prevent countless others from suffering the same fate she had at Alaric's hands. Okay, she said finally, meeting Vivian's gaze with determination. I'll do it, but I want to do it right. No cutting corners, no ethical gray areas. If we're going to take down Edison, we do it cleanly. Vivian's smile widened. I wouldn't have it any other way. And Celeste, this time I want you to build a team you can trust. People who can support you, both professionally and personally. You don't have to carry this burden alone. As they finished their meal, discussing strategy and potential team members, Celeste felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer just fighting for her own survival or redemption. She was fighting for justice on a larger scale. The next few months were a blur of intense work and personal challenges. Celeste threw herself into the Edison investigation with a fervor that inspired her hand-picked team. But even as she made progress on the professional front, her body continued its battle against cancer. One particularly grueling day, as Celeste pored over financial documents in her office, a wave of nausea hit her hard. She barely made it to the small private bathroom adjoining her office before emptying the contents of her stomach. As she slumped against the cool tile wall, trying to gather the strength to stand, a soft knock came at the door. "Celeste?" Vivian's concerned voice called out. "Are you all right?" Celeste closed her eyes, fighting back tears of frustration. "I'm fine," she called back weakly. "Just give me a minute." But Vivian wasn't about to be put off. The door opened slowly, and Celeste felt a cool hand on her forehead. "You're burning up," Vivian said, her voice gentle but firm. "Why didn't you tell me the treatments were hitting you this hard?" Celeste laughed bitterly. "Because I can't afford to be weak right now. The Edison case is too important. I can't let a little nausea slow me down." Vivian sighed, settling down on the floor next to Celeste. "Oh, my dear, when will you learn that acknowledging your limits isn't weakness? It's the height of strength." As Vivian helped her clean up and settle onto the small couch in her office, Celeste felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "I don't know how to thank you, Vivian, for everything you've done for me." Vivian's eyes softened. "You don't have to thank me, Celeste. Just promise me you'll start taking better care of yourself. The company needs you. I need you. And not just as a brilliant analyst or future CEO, as a friend." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Celeste realized that somewhere along the way, her relationship with Vivian had evolved from mentor and protege to something deeper, more personal. "I promise," Celeste said softly. "And thank you for being my friend, Vivian. I don't think I could have come this far without you." As Vivian squeezed her hand gently before leaving her to rest, Celeste felt a shift in her perspective. She had been so focused on proving her worth, on being strong, that she had nearly lost sight of the support system she had built around her. The next day, Celeste called a meeting with her team. As they gathered in the conference room, curiosity evident on their faces, she took a deep breath. "I owe you all an apology," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I haven't been entirely honest with you about the challenges I've been facing. My cancer treatments have been difficult, and I've been trying to shoulder that burden alone, which isn't fair to any of us." She saw surprise and concern flicker across their faces, but pressed on. "From now on, I promise to be more transparent. We're a team, and that means supporting each other through thick and thin. I'm going to need to delegate more, to trust in your abilities. Can I count on you?" The room was silent for a moment, then Jake, her second in command, spoke up. "Celeste, I think I speak for all of us when I say we're honored to work with you. Whatever you need, we're here." A chorus of agreement followed, and Celeste felt a weight lift from her shoulders. This, she realized, was true leadership. Not pretending to be invincible, but being vulnerable and trusting in the strength of her team. As the weeks passed, Celeste found a new rhythm. She balanced her treatments with work, learning to listen to her body and delegate when necessary. And slowly but surely, both her health and the Edison investigation began to show signs of improvement. One afternoon, as she was reviewing some promising leads with Jake, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the headline: "Disgraced financier Alaric Matthews sentenced to 18 years in prison." Jake noticed her distraction. "Everything okay, boss?" Celeste took a deep breath, considering how to respond. A year ago, she might have brushed off the question, buried her feelings. But she was different now. "It's Alaric," she said, her voice steady. "He's been sentenced." Jake's eyes widened in recognition. He knew the broad strokes of Celeste's history with Alaric. "How do you feel about that?" Celeste paused, really examining her emotions. "Relieved," she said finally. "Not because he's suffering, but because justice has been served. And each grateful." "Grateful?" Jake echoed, surprised. Celeste nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "Grateful for where I am now, for the strength I've found, the purpose I've discovered. In a weird way, I owe some of that to Alaric. His betrayal set me on this path. Jake studied her for a moment, then grinned. You're something else, you know that, Celeste. Most people would be planning a celebration right now. Celeste laughed, surprising herself with how light she felt. Oh, I plan to celebrate, Jake, but not Alaric's downfall. I want to celebrate how far we've come on the Edison case. How about drinks with the team after work? My treat. As they returned to their work, Celeste felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had faced her past, confronted her demons, and come out stronger on the other side. And now, with her team by her side and Vivian's unwavering support, she was ready to face whatever challenges the future might hold. Little did she know that the biggest test of her newfound strength and ethics was just around the corner. As the Edison investigation neared its climax, Celeste would soon find herself facing a moral dilemma that would force her to question everything she thought she knew about justice, redemption, and the true meaning of success. The Kansas City skyline glittered in the early morning light as Celeste Matthews strode into the Moreau Enterprises building. Her heels clicked confidently against the polished marble floor, a sound that seemed to echo her rise to power over the past few years. Employees nodded respectfully as she passed, some even stepping aside in awe. This was a far cry from the broken woman who had once entered these doors, desperate for a second chance. As she entered her expansive corner office, Celeste paused to take in the view. The city sprawled before her, a testament to the influence she now wielded. On her desk, a framed photo caught her eye, a snapshot of her and Vivian at a charity gala, both women radiant with success and mutual respect. Celeste smiled, remembering how far she'd come. Her reverie was interrupted by a soft knock. Ms. Matthews, her assistant Tom, called out, "Your 9 a.m. is here, and there's something else you should know." Celeste turned, noting the hesitation in Tom's voice. "What is it?" Tom shifted uncomfortably. "It's about Alaric Matthews. He's been released from prison. Early parole for good behavior." The news hit Celeste like a physical blow. Alaric, free. The man who had betrayed her, left her at her lowest point, was now walking the streets again. She steadied herself against her desk, memories threatening to overwhelm her. "Ms. Matthews?" Tom's concerned voice broke through her thoughts. "Should I reschedule your meeting?" Celeste took a deep breath, straightening her spine. "No," she said firmly. "I won't let this disrupt our work. Send them in." As her team filed in for the morning briefing, Celeste pushed thoughts of Alaric aside. She had more pressing matters to attend to, namely, the final stages of their investigation into the Edison Group. "All right, team," she began, her voice strong and clear. "We're in the home stretch. Jake, what's the latest on the financial trails?" Jake, her trusted second-in-command, pulled up a series of complex diagrams on the conference room screen. "We've traced the bulk of the fraudulent transactions, Celeste. It's bigger than we initially thought. The Edison Group has been siphoning funds from pension plans, manipulating market data, the works. We're talking billions in ill-gotten gains." Celeste nodded, her mind already racing with the implications. "And our evidence, is it airtight?" "Rock solid," Jake confirmed. "We've got paper trails, witness testimonies, even some internal memos that practically amount to confessions. When this breaks, it's going to send shockwaves through the entire financial sector." A grim smile played at Celeste's lips. This was it, the culmination of years of work, the chance to bring down a corrupt institution that had ruined countless lives, just like Alaric had once done. "Excellent work, everyone," she said, surveying her team with pride. "We'll present our findings to the board this afternoon. If they greenlight it, we go to the authorities first thing tomorrow." As the team filed out, energized by the prospect of their impending victory, Celeste felt a familiar surge of purpose. This was why she had fought so hard, why she had pushed through the pain of cancer treatments and the sting of betrayal. She was making a difference, protecting others from the kind of devastation she had once faced. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. By the time Celeste presented their findings to the Moreau Enterprises board, she was running on pure adrenaline. She laid out the evidence methodically, her voice never wavering as she detailed the extent of Edison's corruption. When she finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, Vivian began to applaud. The rest of the board joined in, their faces a mix of awe and determination. "Celeste," Vivian said, her voice filled with pride, "you've outdone yourself. The board unanimously agrees. We move forward with this. Contact the SEC and the FBI first thing in the morning." As Celeste left the boardroom, her heart soaring with triumph, she was met by Tom, his face pale with worry. "Ms. Matthews," he said hesitantly, "there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's very insistent. It's Alaric Matthews." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Celeste gripped the doorframe, her mind reeling. Alaric, here? Now? Of all times? "Where is he?" she managed to ask, her voice surprisingly steady. "In the lobby," Tom replied. "Security is keeping an eye on him. Should I have them escort him out?" Celeste paused, considering. This was a moment she had both dreaded and secretly longed for, the chance to confront the man who had once shattered her world. And now, on the eve of her greatest triumph, here he was. "No," she said finally. "I'll see him. Have security bring him to my office." As she made her way back to her office, Celeste's mind raced. What could Alaric possibly want? Forgiveness? Money? A chance to hurt her again? She steeled herself, determined not to let him see any weakness. When she entered her office, Alaric was already there, standing awkwardly by the window. The years in prison had aged him. His once sleek hair was shot through with grey, and deep lines creased his face. But his eyes, when they met hers, still held that familiar glint of charm and calculation. "Celeste," he breathed, taking a step towards her. "My God, look at you. You look incredible." Celeste held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "That's far enough, Alaric. Why are you here?" He had the grace to look ashamed, dropping his gaze to the floor. I wanted to apologize. For everything. I know it's not enough, but I needed you to know how sorry I am." Celeste laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Sorry? You left me when I had cancer, Alaric. You stole our savings, you lied, you cheated, and now years later you think sorry is going to cut it." Alaric flinched at her words. I know I can never make up for what I did. But Celeste, prison, it changed me, made me see how wrong I was, how much I threw away." "And what?" Celeste asked, her voice cold. "You thought you'd get out and things would just go back to normal? That I'd welcome you with open arms?" No, Alaric said quickly. I hoped maybe we could talk, start fresh somehow. When I saw what you've accomplished, how far you've come. Celeste, I'm so proud of you." The words hit her like a slap. Proud? He had no right to be proud, no right to claim any part of her success. "You don't get to be proud, Alaric," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You don't get to share in this. Everything I've accomplished, I've done in spite of you, not because of you." Alaric's face fell, but he pressed on. "I understand, but Celeste, please, I have nothing. No job, no money, no prospects. I was hoping, maybe you could help me get back on my feet, for old time's sake." And there it was. The real reason for his visit, laid bare. Celeste felt a surge of, not anger exactly, but a cold, clarifying rage. This man, who had once been her everything, was now nothing more than a cautionary tale. "Let me be very clear, Alaric," she said, her voice steady and firm. "I owe you nothing. The woman you knew, the woman you betrayed and abandoned, she doesn't exist anymore. I've built a new life, a better life, without you, and I won't risk that for anything." Alaric's face crumpled, a mix of desperation and anger flashing in his eyes. "Celeste, please, I have nowhere else to turn, after everything we meant to each other." "Stop," Celeste cut him off. "We meant nothing to each other. If we had, you never would have left me when I needed you most. You never would have stolen from me, lied to me, betrayed me in every possible way." She moved to her desk, pressing the intercom button. "Tom, please have security come escort Mr. Matthews out." Alaric's eyes widened in panic. "Celeste, wait. You can't just throw me out like this. I'll tell the press about your past, about how you were involved in my schemes." Celeste laughed, a genuine sound of amusement this time. "Go ahead, Alaric. My past isn't a secret. In fact, it's part of what makes me good at my job. I've taken everything you did to me and turned it into strength, into purpose." As security entered the office, Celeste fixed Alaric with a final, piercing gaze. "How you taught me a valuable lesson, Alaric. You showed me exactly the kind of person I never want to be, and for that, I suppose I should thank you." Alaric's face contorted with a mix of emotions, anger, shame, desperation. As the security guards took his arms, he made one last plea. "Celeste, please, I have nothing, no one, you're all I have left. For a moment Celeste felt a flicker of pity, but she quickly squashed it, remembering the countless nights she had spent alone, sick and terrified, because of this man's selfishness. "No, Alaric," she said softly. "You don't have me. You lost me the day you walked out that door. Goodbye." As Alaric was led away, his protests fading down the hallway, Celeste sank into her chair, emotions swirling within her. She had done it. She had faced her past, confronted the man who had once held so much power over her, and emerged victorious. A soft knock at the door roused her from her thoughts. Vivienne entered, concern etched on her face. "Celeste, are you all right? I heard Alaric was here." Celeste looked up at her mentor, her friend, and felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "I'm okay," she said, surprised to find that it was true. "Actually, I'm better than okay. I feel free." Vivienne smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "You've come so far, Celeste. The woman I met all those years ago would never have handled that situation with such grace and strength. I had a good teacher," Celeste replied, smiling back. Vivienne moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. "You know, Celeste, moments like these, they define us. How we handle our past, how we face those who've wronged us. It shapes our future." Celeste joined her at the window, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. "I used to think about revenge," she admitted, "about making Alaric pay for what he did to me. But now, I realize the best revenge is living well, building something meaningful." Vivienne nodded approvingly. "Exactly. And tomorrow, when we take down Edison Group, you'll be doing just that. You'll be protecting countless others from experiencing the kind of betrayal you endured." As they stood there, looking out over the city they had both played a part in shaping, Celeste felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had faced her demons, confronted her past, and come out stronger on the other side. "Thank you, Vivienne," she said softly, "for believing in me, for giving me a chance when no one else would." Vivienne turned to her, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Oh, Celeste, you did all the hard work. I just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it and built this incredible life for yourself." The moment was interrupted by Tom's voice on the intercom. "Ms. Matthews, the FBI is on line 1. They're ready to move on Edison Group first thing tomorrow morning." Celeste exchanged a look with Vivienne, both women's faces set with determination. This was it, the culmination of years of work, the chance to make a real difference in the world. "Put them through, Tom," Celeste said, her voice strong and clear. As she picked up the phone, she felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. But this time it wasn't a burden. It was a badge of honor. "This is Celeste Matthews," she said into the receiver. "Let's take them down." As Celeste coordinated with the FBI, laying out the plan for the following day's raid on Edison Group, she felt a surge of purpose unlike anything she had ever known. This wasn't just about business success or personal redemption anymore. This was about justice on a grand scale. The next morning dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself was endorsing their mission. Celeste arrived at the office early, her team already assembled and ready for action. The energy in the room was electric, a mix of nervous anticipation and fierce determination. "All right, everyone," Celeste addressed her team, her voice steady and confident. "We've worked hard for this moment. Everything we've uncovered, every late night and early morning, it all leads to this. Today we make a difference." As they made their way to the FBI field office, Celeste couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought her here. From the broken, betrayed woman she had once been to the powerful, purposeful leader she was now, it was a transformation she could scarcely have imagined. The raid on Edison Group's headquarters was a blur of activity. FBI agents swarmed the building, armed with the evidence Celeste and her team had painstakingly gathered. Executives were led out in handcuffs, their faces a mix of shock and anger. Celeste watched it all unfold, her heart pounding with the realization of what they had accomplished. As the dust settled and the initial chaos of the raid subsided, Celeste found herself face to face with the CEO of Edison Group, a man named Robert Hawthorne. She had seen his face in countless news articles and financial reports, but nothing had prepared her for the look of utter defeat in his eyes. "You," he said, his voice a mix of anger and grudging respect. "You're the one who brought us down." Celeste met his gaze steadily. "No, Mr. Hawthorne, you brought yourselves down. We just exposed the truth." Hawthorne laughed bitterly. "The truth? In this business, truth is relative. You of all people should understand that. I heard about your ex-husband, about what he did. How is this any different? For a moment, Celeste felt a flicker of doubt. Was she any better than Alaric, than the people she was helping to bring down? But then she remembered all the lives that had been ruined by Edison's fraud, all the people who had lost their savings, their futures. The difference, she said firmly, is that we're using the truth to protect people, not exploit them. What you did, what Alaric did, it destroyed lives. What we're doing here, it's about giving people a fair chance. As Hawthorne was led away by FBI agents, Celeste felt a weight lift from her shoulders. This was why she had fought so hard, why she had pushed through every obstacle. This moment of justice, of making things right. Later that evening, as the sun set over Kansas City, Celeste found herself back in her office, surrounded by her team. They were celebrating, glasses of champagne in hand, the weight of their accomplishment settling over them. Jake raised his glass in a toast. "To Celeste," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Without her leadership, her vision, none of this would have been possible. As her team echoed the toast, Celeste felt a lump form in her throat. "No," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "To all of us. This was a team effort, from start to finish. We did this together." As the celebration continued around her, Celeste slipped away to the window, gazing out at the city she had come to love. So much had changed since that day Alaric had left her, since she had first walked into Moreau Enterprises looking for a second chance. She thought about Alaric, about their confrontation the day before. She had meant what she said. She didn't owe him anything. But standing here now, at the pinnacle of her success, she realized something profound. Her journey wasn't about Alaric anymore. It wasn't about proving him wrong or getting revenge. It was about becoming the person she was always meant to be. A soft touch on her shoulder roused her from her thoughts. It was Vivian, a proud smile on her face. "Penny, for your thoughts?" the older woman asked. Celeste smiled, turning to face her mentor and friend. "I was just thinking about how far we've come, how different things are now." Vivian nodded, her eyes twinkling. "You've exceeded every expectation, Celeste, but I have a feeling this is just the beginning for you." "What do you mean?" Celeste asked, curiosity piqued. Vivienne took a deep breath, her expression turning serious. "Celeste, I've been thinking about this for a while now. What you've accomplished with the Edison case, the leadership you've shown, it's time." Celeste's heart skipped a beat. "Time for what?" "For you to take the next step," Vivienne said, her voice filled with a mix of pride and determination. "I want you to become the new CEO of Moreau Enterprises." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Celeste felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "Vivian, I don't know what to say." "Are you sure?" Vivian smiled, squeezing Celeste's shoulder gently. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You're ready, Celeste. You've proven that time and time again. It's time for a new generation to take the reins, to lead this company into the future." As the reality of Vivian's offer sank in, Celeste felt a whirlwind of emotions. Excitement, fear, pride, and a deep sense of responsibility all warred within her. She thought about how far she had come, about the broken woman who had once sat on a park bench, pouring out her troubles to a stranger. That woman could never have imagined this moment. "What about you?" Celeste asked, suddenly concerned. "Vivienne, this company is your life's work. I can't just—" Vivienne held up a hand, cutting her off. "My dear, I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be here, as chairman of the board, but it's time for me to step back, to let new blood take the lead, and there's no one I trust more to carry on my legacy than you." Celeste turned back to the window, her mind racing. She thought about all the challenges she had overcome, all the growth she had experienced. She thought about Alaric, about how his betrayal had set her on this path, and she thought about all the people they had helped today, all the lives that would be changed because of their work. Finally, she turned back to Vivian, her decision made. "Okay," she said, her voice steady and sure. "I accept. But on one condition." Vivian raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And what's that?" "That we use our resources, our influence, to do more good," Celeste said, her eyes shining with purpose. "What we did today with Edison Group, that's just the beginning. I want to create a task force within the company dedicated to rooting out corporate fraud and protecting consumers. We have the knowledge, the experience. We can make a real difference." A slow smile spread across Vivienne's face. "Oh, Celeste," she said, her voice filled with pride. "That's exactly why you're the right person for this job. You see beyond the bottom line, you see the potential for real change." As they rejoined the celebration, Celeste felt a new sense of purpose settle over her. This wasn't just about personal success anymore. It was about using her position, her influence, to create lasting change in the world. Later that night, as Celeste prepared to leave the office, she paused at her desk. Her eyes fell on the photo of her and Vivienne at the charity gala. Beside it, she placed a new frame, a news clipping about the Edison Group takedown, with her name prominently featured. These two images, side by side, told the story of her journey. From a woman seeking a second chance to a leader poised to change the face of corporate America. As she turned off the lights and headed out, Celeste felt a sense of excitement for what the future held. She had faced her past, confronted her demons, and come out stronger on the other side. Now, as she stepped into her new role as CEO, she was ready to write the next chapter of her story, not just for herself, but for all those who needed a champion in the often ruthless world of high finance. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Celeste smiled to herself. The woman who had once been defined by Alaric's betrayal was gone. In her place stood a woman of strength, integrity, and purpose. A woman ready to take on the world, one corporate giant at a time. Little did Celeste know that her greatest challenges and her most profound opportunities for change were still to come. The road ahead would test her in ways she couldn't imagine, forcing her to confront not just external adversaries, but her own evolving sense of ethics and justice. But for now, as she stepped out into the Kansas City night, Celeste Matthews was ready for whatever the future might hold. As the Kansas City skyline faded into the rearview mirror, Celeste Matthews let out a long, steady breath. The weight of her confrontation with Alaric still hung heavy in the air, but with each mile that passed, she felt a little lighter. The city that had once been the backdrop to her greatest pain was now the stage for her most impressive triumphs. Her driver, sensing her contemplative mood, remained silent as they made their way to her penthouse apartment. Celeste was grateful for the quiet, using the time to process the whirlwind of events that had transpired over the past few days. The takedown of Edison Group had sent shockwaves through the financial world. Headlines screamed of billions in fraudulent transactions, of pension funds rescued from the brink of collapse, of justice served to white-collar criminals who had long thought themselves untouchable. And at the center of it all was Celeste Matthews, the newly minted CEO of Moreau Enterprises. As they pulled up to her building, Celeste's phone buzzed with a message from Vivienne. "Proud doesn't begin to cover it. You've changed the game, Celeste. Rest up. Tomorrow we change the world." A small smile played at Celeste's lips as she read the message. Vivienne's unwavering support had been a cornerstone of her journey, a constant reminder of how far she'd come and how much further she could go. Stepping into her apartment, Celeste was struck by the contrast between her current life and where she'd been just a few years ago. The spacious rooms filled with tasteful artwork and modern furnishings were a far cry from the modest apartment she'd once shared with Alaric. But it wasn't the material trappings that truly marked the difference. It was the sense of purpose, of hard-won confidence that now infused every aspect of her life. As she poured herself a glass of wine, Celeste's mind wandered to the loose ends still dangling in the wake of her confrontation with Alaric. She picked up her phone, dialing a familiar number. "Celeste?" Sarah's voice came through, warm and concerned. "I saw the news. Are you okay?" Celeste smiled, touched by her friend's enduring care. "I'm fine, Sarah. Better than fine, actually. But I wanted to check on you. How are things at the diner?" Sarah chuckled. "Oh, you know, same old, same old. Although, I have to say, it's pretty surreal seeing my old friend's face plastered all over the TV. You're quite the celebrity around here now." Celeste felt a pang of guilt. In the whirlwind of her rise to power, she hadn't been as present in Sarah's life as she would have liked. "Sarah, I can never thank you enough for what you did for me. You took me in when I had nothing. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for you." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Celeste, you don't owe me anything. That's what friends do. But I won't lie. Things have been tough at the diner lately. The economy, you know?" Celeste's mind raced, an idea forming. "Sarah, what would you say to a change? I'm putting together a new initiative at Moreau Enterprises, a community outreach program. We could use someone with your heart and your connection to the community." The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "Are you serious? Celeste, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Celeste urged. "It's time you got a chance to spread your wings too, Sarah. You've got so much to offer." As they worked out the details, Celeste felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was what true success looked like. Not just personal achievement, but the ability to lift others up along the way. After hanging up with Sarah, Celeste's thoughts turned to Jake and the rest of her team. They had been instrumental in bringing down Edison Group, working tirelessly behind the scenes. She made a mental note to speak with HR about promotions and bonuses. They deserved to share in the success they had helped create. As the night wore on, Celeste found herself unable to sleep, her mind buzzing with plans and possibilities. She wandered to her home office, pulling up the files on her latest project, a comprehensive review of Moreau Enterprises' own practices and those of their major partners. As she pored over the data, a pattern began to emerge. Subtle discrepancies, carefully hidden beneath layers of legitimate transactions. To most it would have been invisible, but Celeste, with her hard-won experience and keen eye for financial manipulation, saw it for what it was. A sophisticated fraud scheme, one that stretched across multiple companies and touched even the highest levels of Moreau Enterprises. Her heart raced as the implications sank in. This wasn't just another corporate scandal. This had the potential to shake the very foundations of the financial world. And at the center of it all, a name that made Celeste's blood run cold. Maxwell Roth, Vivian's longtime friend and business partner. Celeste leaned back in her chair, her mind whirling. What should she do with this information? The ethical path was clear. Report it, bring it to light, no matter the consequences. But a small voice in the back of her mind whispered of other possibilities, of power, of revenge against a system that had once left her broken and alone. As the first light of dawn crept through her windows, Celeste made her decision. She would bring this to Vivian, lay out the evidence, and together they would decide the best course of action. But as she gathered the files, a plan began to form in the back of her mind, a plan that could change everything. The next morning, Celeste strode into Moreau Enterprises with a renewed sense of purpose. Employees nodded respectfully as she passed, some offering congratulations on the Edison Group takedown. But Celeste barely registered their words, her mind focused on the task ahead. She found Vivian in her office, poring over the morning's financial reports. The older woman looked up as Celeste entered, a warm smile spreading across her face. "Celeste, I was just about to call you. The board is thrilled with the Edison outcome. They're talking about fast-tracking some of your proposals for corporate reform." Celeste managed a tight smile, her heart heavy with what she was about to reveal. "Vivian, we need to talk. There's something you need to see." As Celeste laid out her findings, she watched Vivian's expression change from curiosity to disbelief, to a kind of grim resignation. When she finished, the room was filled with a heavy silence. Finally, Vivian spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maxwell, are you sure?" Celeste nodded, pushing the files across the desk. "I triple-checked everything, there's no doubt. He's been orchestrating this for years, right under our noses." Vivian stood, moving to the window. For a long moment, she said nothing, her gaze fixed on the city below. When she turned back to Celeste, there was a steely determination in her eyes. "We have to bring this to light," she said firmly. "No matter the personal cost. It's the right thing to do." Celeste felt a surge of relief and admiration. This was why she respected Vivian so much, her unwavering commitment to doing what was right, even when it was difficult. "I agree," Celeste said, "but we need to be strategic about this. If we move too quickly, Maxwell could destroy evidence or worse." Vivian nodded, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. "You're right, of course. We'll need to plan this carefully. Celeste, I want you to lead this investigation. You've proven yourself more than capable." As they began to outline their strategy, Celeste felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was bigger than anything she'd tackled before, with the potential for far-reaching consequences. But she was ready for the challenge. Over the next few weeks, Celeste threw herself into the investigation. She assembled a small, trusted team, sworn to secrecy. They worked tirelessly, following money trails, uncovering hidden accounts, and piecing together the full extent of Maxwell's fraud. As the evidence mounted, Celeste found herself wrestling with a moral dilemma. The scope of the fraud was even larger than she'd initially thought, implicating not just Maxwell, but several other high-ranking executives across multiple companies. The potential fallout would be catastrophic, affecting thousands of jobs and shaking public trust in the financial sector. One evening, as she was working late in her office, Celeste received an unexpected visitor. It was David Chen, her former boss in the financial analysis department. "Celeste," he said, his voice low and urgent, "we need to talk. It's about Maxwell Roth." Celeste felt her heart rate quicken. "What about him?" David glanced nervously at the door before continuing. I've known about his activities for a while now. I wanted to come forward, but he has dirt on me, on a lot of people. He's been using it to keep us quiet." As David poured out his story, Celeste felt a mix of anger and pity. He had been caught in Maxwell's web, too afraid of personal ruin to speak out. It was a stark reminder of the human cost of corporate corruption. "Thank you for telling me this, David," Celeste said when he finished. "It can't have been easy. But I need to know, are you willing to go on record with this information?" David hesitated, fear flashing in his eyes. But then, slowly, he nodded. "Yes, it's time to make this right." As David left, Celeste felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about exposing fraud anymore. It was about giving a voice to those who had been silenced, about breaking the cycle of fear and intimidation that allowed corruption to flourish. The next morning, Celeste called an emergency meeting with Vivian and the board of directors. As she laid out the full extent of their findings, including David's testimony, she watched the shock and dismay spread across their faces. "This goes beyond Moreau Enterprises," Celeste concluded. "It's systemic, touching multiple companies, even regulatory bodies. If we bring this to light, the repercussions will be significant." The room erupted into heated discussion. Some board members argued for keeping the matter internal, for fear of the company's reputation. Others pushed for immediate disclosure, regardless of the consequences. As the debate raged, Celeste caught Vivian's eye. The older woman gave her a slight nod, a silent signal of support. Taking a deep breath, Celeste stood, commanding the room's attention. "I understand the concerns about the potential fallout," she began, her voice steady and clear. "But we have a responsibility that goes beyond our bottom line. We have the chance to set a new standard for corporate integrity, to show that no one is above the law no matter how powerful they may be." She paused, looking each board member in the eye. "Yes, there will be short-term pain. Our stock will take a hit. We may lose partners, but in the long run, we'll gain something far more valuable. Trust. The trust of our employees, our shareholders, and the public. And that, I believe, is the foundation of true, lasting success." As Celeste finished speaking, a hush fell over the room. Then, slowly, one board member began to applaud. Others joined in, and soon the room was filled with the sound of approval. Vivian stood, a proud smile on her face. "I think we have our answer. Celeste, you have the board's full support. Proceed with the disclosure." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Celeste worked closely with legal teams, PR specialists, and government officials to prepare for the public announcement. As news of the impending disclosure began to leak, the financial world held its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. On the morning of the announcement, Celeste stood before a sea of reporters, cameras flashing. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and strong. "Today, Moreau Enterprises is taking a stand against corporate fraud and corruption." As she laid out the details of their investigation, Celeste could almost feel the shockwaves rippling through the financial world. She spoke of the widespread nature of the fraud, of the complicity of high-ranking executives, of the need for systemic change. "We are committed to full transparency and cooperation with authorities," she concluded. "But more than that, we are committed to being part of the solution. Today marks the beginning of a new era at Moreau Enterprises, one of uncompromising integrity and ethical leadership." As she stepped away from the podium, Celeste felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had done it. She had taken a stand not just for herself, but for all those who had been victimized by corporate greed and corruption. In the days that followed, the fallout was intense. Moreau Enterprises' stock took a significant hit. Several high-profile executives, including Maxwell Roth, were arrested. The financial media was in a frenzy, with pundits debating the long-term implications of the disclosure. But amidst the chaos, something unexpected began to happen. Messages of support started pouring in, from employees, from small investors, from ordinary people who saw in Celeste's actions a glimmer of hope for a more ethical financial system. One evening, as Celeste was preparing to leave the office after another long day, she found Vivienne waiting by her door. "Walk with me," the older woman said, a familiar twinkle in her eye. They made their way to the rooftop garden, the same spot where Vivienne had offered Celeste the CEO position. As they looked out over the city, Vivienne turned to her protégé. "You've started something remarkable, Celeste," she said softly. "Something that goes far beyond Moreau Enterprises. You've given people hope that change is possible, that integrity can win out over greed." Celeste felt a lump form in her throat. "I couldn't have done it without you, Vivienne, without the chance you gave me." Vivienne smiled, shaking her head. "No, my dear, this was all you. Your strength, your integrity, your vision. You've taken everything life has thrown at you, the betrayal, the illness, the setbacks, and turned it into a force for good." As they stood there, looking out over the city they had both played a part in shaping, Celeste felt a sense of peace settle over her. She thought about how far she had come, about the broken woman who had once sat on a park bench, pouring out her troubles to a stranger. That woman could never have imagined this moment, but even as she basked in the glow of her accomplishments, a small voice in the back of Celeste's mind whispered of unfinished business, of loose ends still to be tied up, of a reckoning yet to come. For even as she had exposed Maxwell Roth's fraud, Celeste had uncovered something else, a connection that led back to Alaric, to the man who had set her on this path in the first place. It was a thread she had yet to pull, a potential for a different kind of justice, or perhaps revenge. As the sun set over Kansas City, casting long shadows across the rooftop garden, Celeste made a silent vow. She would see this through to the end, wherever it might lead. Not for personal gain or petty vengeance, but for the chance to truly close this chapter of her life and start anew. Little did she know that the decisions she would make in the coming days would not only shape her future, but would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything she thought she knew about justice, redemption, and the true meaning of success. The stage was set for Celeste's final act, a confrontation with her past that would determine the course of her future. As she and Vivienne made their way back inside, Celeste felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The greatest test of her newfound strength and ethics lay just ahead, promising to push her to her limits and beyond. 5 years had passed since Celeste Matthews had stood before a sea of cameras, exposing one of the largest financial fraud schemes in recent history. The Kansas City skyline had changed, new towers reaching towards the heavens, but the view from Celeste's office remained as commanding as ever. At 45, Celeste carried herself with a quiet confidence that spoke of battles fought and won. Her once dark hair now bore distinguished streaks of silver, and the lines around her eyes told stories of both laughter and determination. She stood at the window, gazing out at the city she had helped reshape, a small smile playing at her lips. A soft knock at the door broke her reverie. "Come in," she called, turning to greet her visitor. Sarah entered, her face beaming with excitement. "Celeste, the numbers are in. The Moreau Foundation's financial literacy program has reached over 1 million people this year alone. We're making a real difference." Celeste's smile widened as she embraced her old friend. Sarah's transition from diner owner to head of the Moreau Foundation's community outreach had been nothing short of remarkable. It was a testament to the ripple effect of second chances. "That's fantastic news, Sarah. I knew you were the right person for this job." As they sat down to discuss the Foundation's next steps, Celeste couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd both come. The woman who had once taken in a broken, desperate Celeste was now a powerful force for change in her own right. Their meeting was interrupted by Celeste's assistant. "Ms. Matthews, your 2 o'clock is here, Mr. Alaric Matthews." Celeste felt a flutter in her stomach, a mix of old pain and newfound strength. "Thank you, Tom. Send him in." Sarah squeezed Celeste's hand supportively before leaving. "You've got this," she whispered. Moments later, Alaric walked in. The years hadn't been kind to him. His once proud posture was now slightly stooped, his designer suit hanging loosely on his frame. But his eyes, when they met Celeste's, still held a glimmer of their old charm. "Celeste," he said, his voice a mix of awe and trepidation. "Thank you for seeing me." Celeste gestured for him to sit. "You said it was important, Alaric. What can I do for you?" Alaric shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I need your help. I've been trying to get back on my feet since everything happened, but no one will give me a chance. Your name, it still carries weight. If you could just put in a good word for me somewhere." Celeste studied him for a long moment, memories of their past flooding back. The betrayal, the pain, the long journey to healing, but also, unexpectedly, a sense of gratitude for the path his actions had set her on. "Alaric," she began, her voice steady, "I'm not going to give you a recommendation. That's not why I agreed to this meeting." Confusion and then anger flashed across Alaric's face. "Then why? To humiliate me? To show off how far you've come while I've fallen?" Celeste shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. "No, Alaric. I called you here to thank you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Alaric's eyes widened in disbelief. "Thank me? For what? For leaving you when you were sick? For stealing from you?" "In a way, yes," Celeste replied calmly. "Your actions set me on a path I never could have imagined. They forced me to find strength I didn't know I had, and in doing so, they led me to a life where I can make a real difference in the world." She stood, moving to a cabinet in the corner of her office. From it, she retrieved a thick file. "But that's not the only reason I wanted to see you," she continued, returning to her desk. "Do you remember Maxwell Roth?" Alaric's face paled at the name. "Celeste, I don't know what you think you know, but—" "I know everything, Alaric," Celeste cut him off, her voice firm but not unkind. "I know about your dealings with Maxwell. I know about the offshore accounts, the insider trading, all of it." She opened the file, spreading out documents across her desk. Bank statements, emails, phone records, a paper trail that told a damning story. "For years, I've had the power to bring this to light," Celeste explained. "To make sure you never worked in finance again. To see you back behind bars." Alaric slumped in his chair, defeat written across his features. "So why didn't you? Why tell me this now?" Celeste leaned forward, her gaze intense. "Because revenge isn't the answer, Alaric. It never was. What I've learned, what I've built, it's about more than just personal vindication. It's about creating a system where people like you can't prey on the vulnerable anymore." She gathered the documents, returning them to the file. "I'm not going to turn you in, Alaric, but I'm also not going to help you. You have a choice now. You can continue down this path, always looking for the next scheme, the next victim. Or you can do what I did, use this as a chance to reinvent yourself, to find a way to contribute positively to the world." Alaric stared at her, a mix of emotions playing across his face. I don't know how," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Celeste's expression softened. "Start small. Volunteer. Use your financial knowledge to help people avoid the kind of schemes you once perpetrated. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But it's possible. I'm living proof of that." As Alaric left her office, visibly shaken but with a glimmer of something new in his eyes, Celeste felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had finally closed the chapter on that part of her life, not through vengeance but through compassion and wisdom, hard won. Later that evening, as Celeste prepared to leave the office, she found Vivienne waiting for her by the elevator, just as she had so many years ago. "I heard Alaric was here," Vivienne said, concern etched on her face. "Are you all right?" Celeste smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile. "I am. Better than all right, actually. I think I finally found the closure I've been looking for all these years." As they rode the elevator down together, Vivienne studied her protégé with pride. "You know, Celeste, when I first met you in that park, I saw potential, but you've exceeded every expectation. You haven't just succeeded, you've redefined what success means in this industry." They stepped out into the warm Kansas City evening, the city alive with possibility. "What's next for you, Celeste?" Vivienne asked. "You've achieved so much. Where do you go from here?" Celeste looked out at the city, her city, a determined glint in her eye. "We've made progress, Vivienne, but there's still so much work to do. Financial fraud, corporate corruption, they're still out there hurting people every day. I want to take what we've built here and expand it. Create a network of ethical businesses, a new standard for corporate responsibility." Vivienne nodded approvingly. "Ambitious as ever. I wouldn't expect anything less." As they parted ways, Celeste felt a surge of excitement for the future. She had transformed her pain into purpose, her setbacks into strength, and in doing so, she had not only changed her own life, but had set in motion changes that would ripple out, touching countless others. The woman who had once been defined by Alaric's betrayal was gone. In her place stood a leader, a visionary, a force for change. Celeste Matthews had not just survived, she had flourished, turning her darkest moments into a beacon of hope for others. As she walked towards her car, the setting sun painting the Kansas City skyline in hues of gold and pink, Celeste felt a profound sense of peace. Her journey had been long and often painful, but it had led her to exactly where she was meant to be. The future stretched out before her, full of challenges and opportunities. But this time, Celeste was ready. Ready to face whatever came her way, to continue fighting for justice, to keep pushing for a world where second chances weren't just possible, but celebrated. For in the end, Celeste realized, true revenge wasn't about punishment or retribution. It was about living well, about using one's experiences, even the painful ones, to create positive change. And by that measure, she had succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. As the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Celeste Matthews stepped into her future, her heart full of hope, her spirit unbroken, ready to write the next chapter in her extraordinary story. If this story touched your heart, and you want to keep following inspiring and emotional tales, make sure to subscribe to our channel to catch the new stories we share daily. And if you missed our latest story, here's what happened. On the most important day of her life, poor Eleanor Hayes felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Her fiancé, Lucas Caldwell, the millionaire heir to one of California's most respected wine empires, simply abandoned her at the altar without looking back. Humiliated and confused about what was happening, Eleanor vanished. But years later she returned, rich, powerful, and most importantly, with the proof of her innocence in hand, to Lucas's worst nightmare. Want to find out what happened next? Then click on the video appearing on your screen now and see it all unfold. I'll see you there.